I still remember the exact moment I stepped into that crowded living room, the smell of fried chicken and fresh pies hitting me like a wave. The chatter, the clinking of plates, the laughter, it all felt normal until I saw her. Auntie stepped in behind me, small and hesitant, clutching a tiny wrapped gift. Her hands were shaking, not from the excitement of giving, but from the weight of knowing how little they would respect it. I could see it in her eyes, the mixture of hope and dread. Almost instantly, the snickers started. Cousins leaned toward each other, whispering sharp words about how cheap her gift looked. The laughter sliced through the air, sharp and cruel, and my chest tightened. That familiar knot of anger and helplessness formed in my stomach. She forced a smile, cheeks burning, trying so hard to hide the humiliation, but I could see every tremor of shame. Uncle let out a loud, sarcastic chuckle, tossing a comment about thrift stores across the room. The sting of judgment was palpable, wrapping around Auntie like a suffocating blanket. I could hear it in every voice, every murmur, the silent mockery, the enjoyment of her discomfort. I glanced down at her hands. The way she held that gift, it wasn't just an object to her. It was courage, a fragment of herself she dared to put forward despite knowing she might be mocked. Then someone loudly questioned if she even remembered the right occasion, and the room erupted into a chorus of cruel laughter. My stomach sank. I felt powerless, wishing I could step in and protect her, but knowing words wouldn't reach these people. Her eyes met mine for a fleeting second, silently pleading for calm, for restraint, for me to hold her dignity in my presence at least. Around us, distant relatives exchanged glances, some amused, some guilty, feeding the toxicity in the room like oxygen to fire. The laughter stretched and echoed, suffocating. The walls seemed closer, pressing in, trapping her small figure and me beside her. My chest burned with that sharp pang of injustice, the one that leaves a bitter taste and refuses to let go. Every fiber of me wanted to stop it, to make them feel even a fraction of the humiliation they were so eagerly dishing out. And yet, she stood there trembling, holding on to her gift, and I knew this moment, this cruel, laughing, judging moment, was only the beginning. Auntie and I have always shared a bond that others couldn't see, quiet but unbreakable. When my parents were too busy to notice me, she was there, holding me up when the world seemed ready to let me fall. I remember countless nights when she stayed awake, sewing costumes for school plays, her hands raw, her body exhausted, yet never a complaint. She poured everything into others, never once thinking of herself. Birthday presents, school projects, home-cooked meals, she gave endlessly, always invisible, always overlooked. I remember the first time I saw her eyes well up after being dismissed at a family gathering. It was a fleeting moment, almost imperceptible, but I caught it. That tiny crack in her smile revealed the quiet pain she bore for years, hidden behind politeness and grace. She had a heart that couldn't ignore suffering. I remember the stray dog she rescued, beaten and abandoned. She spent months nursing it back to health, feeding it, cleaning it, loving it, all while no one noticed, all while no one cared. I remember the sting of injustice she endured quietly. She once lost a job unfairly, the boss smirking as he let her go, acting as if it were nothing, as if her effort and loyalty meant nothing. The unfairness lingered in her eyes for years, buried under her warm, generous smile. I remember overhearing my cousins mock her accent when she moved here from a small town, laughing at the way she spoke, the words she chose as if it made her less worthy, and yet she endured it with quiet resilience, never lashing out, never demanding recognition, though she deserved it all. Her strength became my own backbone. Her perseverance in the face of dismissive laughter, ridicule, and constant underestimation taught me what it meant to endure, to survive, and to rise. Tonight, as they laughed at her gift, I realized it wasn't just about the little present she brought. It was the culmination of decades of being dismissed, ignored, underestimated, and mocked. Each laugh echoed the weight of every insult she had ever endured, every slight that left her standing alone. Anger boiled inside me, sharp and precise, knowing the world had pushed her too far this time. The humiliation, the sneers, the condescending whispers, it was all too much. And finally, it was our turn to shift the balance. Memories of whispered insults at weddings, subtle jabs during holidays, and quiet ridicule at family gatherings flashed vividly. Every memory fueled the fire. Every injustice added weight to the plan I was beginning to form. I looked at her then and made a silent promise. The next time, Aunty would not be powerless. The world would see her strength, her worth, and they would feel, for the first time, the full measure of what they had tried to take from her. I watched Aunty slowly inch toward the far corner of the room, the gift pressed against her chest like a shield. Her shoulders curled inward, as if she were trying to disappear into the wallpaper. The laughter still lingered around her like smoke. Across the room, my cousins exchanged smug, self-satisfied grins, completely unaware that something inside me had already shifted, that a storm had already begun to form. They thought the night was over. They had no idea it was only beginning. That same night, long after everyone went home, I sat at my desk with the gift under a lamp. My fingers traced the delicate patina, the tiny markings etched into its surface, symbols too precise, too intentional to be worthless. A hunch sparked in my chest, sharp and persistent. I opened tabs for antique stores, auction houses, collectors' forums, searching, comparing, squinting at similarities. Hours slipped by. Catalogs and reference books piled around me. I cross-checked the makers, serial numbers, and manufacturing techniques. Every new detail tightened the knot in my stomach, but not with fear, with hope. The more I uncovered, the more a fierce pride swelled in me. This wasn't just a gift. This was history. This was craftsmanship. This was worth something, maybe far more than anyone in that room could comprehend. The next morning, I walked into a local appraiser's shop, gift wrapped in brown paper, pretending to be a casual buyer. "Just curious about its value," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Art?" But the second he unwrapped it, his eyes widened. He leaned closer, almost reverently. "Where did you get this?" he whispered. "This piece? This is rare. Very rare." My heartbeat pounded in my ears as he confirmed what I already suspected. The cheap trinket they mocked was worth a fortune, a priceless antique disguised in simple wrapping. A wave of vindication washed over me, sharp, electric. I imagined their faces, every smirk collapsing, every laugh choking in their throats. But I knew I couldn't just storm in waving papers. Revenge needed precision, dignity, timing. So, over the next few days, I crafted a plan. Every phone call, every email to collectors and experts became a chess move. Slow, deliberate, perfect. I dropped subtle hints to relatives, casual mentions of old valuables or unexpected appraisals, and watched their expressions flicker. Confusion first, then curiosity, then doubt. The same doubt that slowly crept through the group that once laughed so confidently. Whispers began to spread. I caught fragments. What if it's real? Did you hear something about an antique? Maybe we misjudged. The tension thickened, building like pressure before a storm, and inside me, that excitement mixed with fear. Fear of revealing too early, fear of losing control. Timing was everything. So I waited, I watched, I planned. Every move I made brought me one step closer to turning their laughter into something they'd never forget. The phone rang just as Aunty was folding laundry, her fingers stiff from the day's work. When she answered, I could see it, the subtle shift in her posture, the way her shoulders straightened, her hands no longer trembling. The appraiser's voice on the other end confirmed it. The gift wasn't just valuable, it was historically significant, rare beyond belief. Her eyes glowed with a quiet, unspoken victory. A week later, the next family gathering was set. The air felt heavy, tense, as if the storm I'd been building was about to break. I sat beside her, silent, feeling the energy of anticipation crackle between us. "You're ready," I whispered, and she nodded ever so slightly. The moment of revelation was hers, and hers alone. She would present the gift herself. I watched the room fill with our relatives, oblivious to the reckoning that was coming. The smug expressions, the quiet arrogance, they didn't know what was about to hit them. Aunty stepped forward. She cleared her throat, her voice calm, almost melodic, and I felt the weight of the room shift. In her hands, the gift shimmered beneath the chandelier, ordinary wrapping, hiding extraordinary value. "I had it appraised," she said softly, "and it turns out it's a rare antique, worth far more than any of us could have imagined." The room froze. Shock rippled across faces. Laughter faltered midair, dying in confusion. Mouths opened and closed, eyes widened. Cousins exchanged panicked glances, realizing their smug judgment had been catastrophically wrong. Uncle tried to make a joke, to reclaim some sense of authority, but the words caught in his throat. The truth landed like a hammer, shattering the pretense of superiority they had all clung to. I felt a surge of satisfaction, sharp and sweet, tempered by awe. Aunty, quiet, reserved, unassuming, held the room in her hands. Her power was understated, but absolute. Her gaze met mine across the room. No words were needed. That single glance carried decades of humiliation, years of perseverance, and the pure, unyielding triumph of finally being seen and respected. It was a wordless moment of victory, intimate and complete, and I knew nothing would ever be the same. I spread the photographs and appraisal papers across the table, careful, methodical, each document a quiet hammer striking at their ignorance. Every image, every certificate, every official stamp built the case for the truth they had refused to see. The next family event was framed as a casual show and tell, invitations vague enough to seem ordinary, yet precise enough to gather every key player. The room buzzed with routine chatter, completely unaware that the stage was set for a reckoning. Aunty stepped forward, the gift cradled in her hands. Her movements were deliberate, calm, almost serene. "I thought you might like to see this," she said, and then, as naturally as breathing, revealed its true value. Faces around her shifted. Smugness melted into shock. Embarrassment colored pale cheeks. Some cousins even seemed physically startled, guilt flashing in their eyes as the weight of their mockery crashed down on them. Whispers started, soft at first. "Did you see the appraisal? How could we have been so wrong?" The words spread like wildfire, and I felt the tension thicken, tangible in the air. Aunty smiled softly, recounting the story of the gift, how it had been passed down through generations, carrying memories, craftsmanship, and history. The room leaned in, spellbound, as the richness of her inheritance came alive in her voice. I handed her a discreet legal document confirming her ownership rights, a safeguard against any lingering challenge. The paperwork was subtle, yet it reinforced her authority, cementing her victory. The room hummed with unease. Relatives attempted apologies, their voices shaky, hollow against the power of truth. I saw their arrogance crumble, the same people who had laughed at her now silent, humbled by the undeniable reality. Emotional justice landed heavier than any fortune. The laughter that had once stung now felt like a memory, a distant echo eclipsed by the full measure of vindication. I felt pride swell within me, sharp and bright, as Aunty carried herself with grace, her dignity restored, untouchable. The cousins slowly realized the truth. The cheap gift was never cheap. It was their perception that had been shallow, blind, and cruel. I savored every second, the the cinematic perfection of the moment. Every smirk, every whisper of doubt, every flicker of awe, they were proof that Auntie's quiet strength had finally shattered their ignorance. Her power shone brightest not in noise or anger, but in calm, deliberate, undeniable triumph. The atmosphere at the next family gathering was different. Relatives who once sneered now approached Auntie with careful respect. Some offered quiet apologies, awkward but sincere, their voices trembling as they tried to bridge the gap they had once widened with laughter. After the crowd dispersed, I sat beside her, recounting the journey in low tones. Her hand found mine and squeezed it, a silent gesture of gratitude that spoke louder than any words. The antique now had a place of honor in her home, ensured and displayed tastefully. It wasn't just a piece of history, it was a symbol of resilience, of dignity reclaimed from years of being underestimated. For the first time in years, Auntie laughed freely, unburdened from the weight of humiliation she had carried silently. I could see it in her eyes, the lightness that had been missing for decades. Even family dynamics had shifted subtly. Gossip was replaced with genuine curiosity, questions asked with interest rather than judgment, and the room felt lighter, cleaner, less poisoned by old grudges. Auntie began receiving calls from collectors, historians, and enthusiasts. Her knowledge, her taste, her judgment, qualities long ignored, were suddenly admired, respected, and sought after. Whoa! I reflected on the emotional toll of those years of dismissal, the quiet bruises and invisible scars. Triumph, I realized, tastes far sweeter when it is earned after enduring such trials. I cataloged every detail in my mind, knowing this story needed to be shared for anyone who had ever felt powerless, dismissed, or invisible. Relief and exhilaration coursed through me simultaneously. The weight of justice carried silently for so long had finally been lifted. Later, Auntie and I sat on the porch, sipping tea, watching the sun sink below the horizon. The world seemed to exhale with us, victorious yet serene. The storm finally settled. I understood then that the gift's value was never just monetary. Its worth lay in the reclamation of dignity, in the quiet, unassailable power she now held. The emotional scars of the past lingered, faint but present, marked not by shame but by triumph. The years of belittlement had been transformed into a monument of strength, resilience, and justice. I faced the camera, the porch bathed in the golden glow of sunset, my voice calm but carrying the weight of everything that has happened. This is a story about ridicule, about laughter that cuts deeper than anyone should endure, and about the quiet power of perseverance. I begin, my eyes tracing the horizon as memories of that night linger vividly. I reflect on the small, seemingly insignificant actions that Auntie took, the patience, the care, the attention to detail that eventually rippled into a monumental victory. Every moment of kindness, every quiet decision had built toward this one triumphant revelation. The laughter that once hurt so sharply now serves as a reminder of her resilience, of the unshakable strength that refused to bow to mockery or doubt. The lesson is clear. Value is not always obvious. Those who mock, who laugh, who judge hastily, they often underestimate the depth, the worth, and the quiet power of those they dismiss. I urge you, the viewer, to recognize and protect that quiet strength in the people around you. It might be subtle, it might be hidden, but it carries the potential to overturn injustice in ways you can barely imagine. Wow. Revenge is not about cruelty. It is not about shouting or striking back in anger. True revenge, true justice, comes from restoring dignity, from showing the world that underestimation can be met with quiet, unstoppable power. The camera lingers on Auntie, radiant, her laughter spilling into the warm evening air as a neighbor curiously asks about the antique. She is unburdened, unstoppable, triumphant. I close with a question that lingers. Who in your life deserves a moment like this? The soft glow of sunset deepens, the music swells gently, and the message remains. Power, patience, and quiet strategy always win. Subscribe for more stories of triumph, justice, and emotional victories.